They said secrets always come out, but no one expected this one to explode in such a dramatic way. In a courtroom packed with reporters, lawyers, and a family torn apart, one man's affair didn't just ruin his marriage, it cost him millions. What happened that day didn't just shock his wife, it shocked the entire city. And tonight, you're about to hear the story that proves betrayal always has a price. Welcome to the channel, where we bring you real stories filled with twists, lessons, and unforgettable drama. If you enjoy powerful tales like this one, make sure to subscribe and join us every day for more. It all began quietly, almost invisibly. To outsiders, David and Claire looked like the perfect couple. Years of marriage, a big house, 2 kids, vacations that looked straight out of a magazine. But behind the photos and polished smiles, something darker was growing. Claire had suspicions, small inconsistencies in David's stories, late nights at the office, unexplained expenses. She asked, she doubted, but David always smoothed it over with charm. Until one day, the truth came knocking, louder than she could ignore. Claire wasn't prepared for what she found. Buried deep in phone records, hidden under business expenses, there was another woman. The discovery shattered her. But Claire didn't just see betrayal, she saw an opportunity for justice. She didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't throw him out. She hired the best attorney she could find. She knew that David's arrogance would be his own undoing, and she was ready to make sure every lie he told would come back to haunt him in court. When the case finally hit the courtroom, the affair was no longer just a personal tragedy. It became the centerpiece of the entire divorce battle. The judge, the lawyers, the jury, and the entire public watched as David's carefully crafted life unraveled piece by piece. Every dinner, every gift, every hotel room receipt. Claire's attorney had them all. The evidence was undeniable, and worse for David, it painted him not only as unfaithful, but as reckless with the family's finances. The whispers spread quickly. What kind of man would risk everything for a fleeting romance? The newspapers had a field day, turning his name into headlines that screamed betrayal and scandal. What David thought would stay hidden in shadows was now exposed under the harshest spotlight of all, a courtroom where truth has nowhere to hide. And yet, the affair was only the beginning, because as the trial went on, it became clear that this wasn't just about love or betrayal. It was about power, money, and the staggering cost of arrogance. And for David, the true price of his choices was only just beginning to reveal itself. The courtroom atmosphere grew heavier with each passing day. David sat at the defense table, his once confident posture now slumped, his eyes darting between his lawyer and the damning evidence being displayed for all to see. He had thought he was clever, that his wealth and status would shield him from consequences. But in that room, titles meant nothing. Facts did, and the facts were stacked against him like a mountain he could never climb. Claire's lawyer moved with precision, every word cutting deeper into David's carefully woven lies. A receipt for a 5-star hotel appeared on the screen. Then photographs of expensive jewelry. Then credit card charges for dinners in restaurants far from home. Piece by piece, the affair was no longer just suspicion. It was undeniable proof. The room buzzed with whispers, and David's reputation, once untouchable, was crumbling in real time. Claire sat quietly, her composure unshaken. For years she had swallowed her doubts, lived with his excuses, and endured the humiliation of silence. But now, the silence was broken. Now, her truth filled the courtroom. backed by evidence that David could no longer escape. This wasn't revenge, it was justice, and she wasn't alone. The law was on her side, and so was the raw weight of truth. The judge watched it all, his expression steady, but his eyes sharp. When he finally spoke, his words carried a weight that silenced even the whispers. "Mr. Reynolds," he said, addressing David directly, "the court does not look kindly on deception, particularly when it involves both betrayal of trust and reckless financial behavior. The impact of that statement hit harder than any piece of evidence. It was a signal, a warning of what was coming. The judge wasn't just seeing a husband who strayed, he was seeing a man who gambled with his family's future for selfish desire. And judges, above all, demand accountability. David's lawyer tried desperately to shift the narrative, painting the affair as a private mistake that shouldn't overshadow years of marriage. But the attempt fell flat. The courtroom had seen too much. They had seen receipts, photographs, timelines, all of it aligning perfectly to tell one clear story. A story of betrayal and recklessness. Outside the courthouse, the media waited like vultures. Headlines were already being drafted. For a man who once walked into boardrooms with his head held high, the fall was brutal. Every headline, every whispered conversation in the city, chipped away at the empire he had built. He wasn't just losing his wife, his dignity, or his children's trust. He was about to lose millions. Because the affair wasn't just scandalous, it was costly. And in divorce court, betrayal has a very real price tag. The deeper the evidence went, the clearer it became that David's fortune, carefully built over years of hard work, was slipping through his fingers faster than he ever imagined. But the worst was still to come. Because hidden within the mountain of evidence was one discovery so explosive, it didn't just threaten David's. The courtroom was already tense, but when Claire's lawyer pulled out the final set of documents, the air seemed to freeze. It wasn't just about hotel bills or late-night dinners anymore. This was bigger. Hidden in David's financial records were secret accounts. Money quietly moved, assets concealed, investments made in someone else's name. It wasn't just an affair of the heart anymore. It was financial betrayal, too. The revelation sent a shockwave through the room. Even David's lawyer leaned back, stunned by what he was seeing. Claire's team had uncovered not only his infidelity, but also his attempts to protect the woman he had risked everything for. Lavish gifts, hidden transfers, even a small property bought under her name. All while Claire, his wife of 20 years, was left in the dark. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Reynolds," he said firmly, "are you aware that hiding marital assets is not only unethical but illegal?" David opened his mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. For the first time in his life, silence was his only defense. He had been outmaneuvered. The gallery erupted in whispers. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others smirked at the fall of a man who once acted untouchable. Outside those courtroom walls, the story was already spreading. Business partners, clients, investors, all waiting to see if David Reynolds was the man they thought he was, or just another fraud with a polished suit. Claire, however, sat with quiet strength. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't triumphant. She was simply present, calm in the storm, while David unraveled. For years she had doubted herself, questioning whether she was imagining things, wondering if the little signs meant nothing. Now she had the answer. The betrayal wasn't in her head. It was in the open, undeniable, and irreversible. The lawyer pressed further. "Your Honor, these accounts prove not just infidelity, but deliberate concealment of wealth. This is no longer just a case of betrayal. It is a case of deception that violates the integrity of the marriage contract itself. The words hit like a hammer, sealing David's fate. David slumped back in his chair. His empire was slipping away, not through business failure, not through market crashes, but through his own decisions. Every hidden dollar, every late-night lie, every reckless choice, it all led here. And then came the judge's voice again, calm but commanding. This court will not tolerate dishonesty. When a man hides the truth from his family, he must face the consequences. And Mr. Reynolds, your consequences will be severe. Those words echoed like a sentence before the sentence. David's lawyer shuffled papers desperately, but it was clear. There was no escape. The verdict was drawing closer, and everyone in the room could feel it. But the final blow, the moment that would decide everything, was still waiting. Because the judge wasn't finished. He had seen enough, heard enough, and soon he would deliver a ruling that wouldn't just cost David millions, it would rewrite the rest of his life. The courtroom was silent, every pair of eyes locked on the judge as he prepared to deliver his ruling. David sat motionless, his once confident posture reduced to a slump of defeat. Claire's eyes never left him, not with anger, not with triumph, but with a kind of sorrow that words couldn't capture. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of a man she once believed in. The judge cleared his throat. This court finds that Mr. Reynolds acted with deliberate deception, both financially and personally. Therefore, in accordance with the law, the majority of marital assets will be awarded to Mrs. Reynolds. Gasps filled the room. Millions, entire fortunes, shifted hands with that single declaration. Years of wealth building gone in seconds. But the judge wasn't done. His voice grew firmer. Furthermore, due to his attempts to conceal assets, additional penalties will be imposed. Let this stand as a reminder. Dishonesty in marriage, as in law, has consequences far beyond what one imagines. The gavel struck, echoing through the chamber like a final heartbeat. It was over. David buried his face in his hands. The man who once ruled boardrooms and luxury galas now sat broken, stripped not only of wealth, but of dignity. His empire hadn't fallen from external threats. It had crumbled from within, destroyed by a single choice he thought he could keep hidden. Claire stood slowly, her strength carrying her through the storm. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. She simply walked out of that courtroom free, carrying nothing but the truth and the courage it had taken to stand up against lies. The story of David Reynolds spread far beyond the courtroom walls. Business associates whispered, the media covered every detail, and people everywhere saw the same lesson. No matter how powerful you appear, deception will always catch up. And that's the truth this story leaves us with. One decision, one secret, one lie can unravel everything you've built. Wealth, status, reputation, none of it can protect you when the truth comes to light. If you've stayed with me through this powerful story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for daily videos like this one. Every day, we uncover stories that reveal the hidden lessons behind life's biggest dramas. Remember this, truth may hurt, but lies destroy. Protect what matters, stay honest, and never gamble everything for a secret you think will never be exposed. Because in the end, the truth always finds its way to the surface.